All right, welcome back to the Mental Toughness Podcast.org. I'm Steve Siebold, your host. And remember to subscribe to the podcast at Mental Toughness Podcast.org, O-R-G, Mental Toughness Podcast.org. And we'll email you a link to the weekly episode, the new episode, so you don't miss any of the episodes. You don't want to miss any of these episodes. Okay, so today I want to talk about the power of the 360-degree view of yourself as a performer. If that's the goal of listening to this podcast, you're trying to increase your own performance, and who isn't, frankly. Or you're coaching someone, because I know a lot of you guys are coaches, and you're coaching someone or a team, and you're trying to take them to the next level, like we all are as coaches. And so the power of the 360 view is looking at the performer, again, yourself or someone else or a team as a whole, looking at every aspect of their performance, starting with the way they think. Because everything starts with the way a performer thinks. Again, whether it's an entrepreneur or it's an athlete or it's a parent or it's a spouse, whatever it is, it all begins obviously with the way we all think. I mean, that's the catalyst that drives pretty much everything in the process. So starting with the way they think. In other words, where do you start? Let's break it down. Where do you start with someone as a coach, as a psychological coach? Where do you start in terms of finding out what people think? Okay, what you have to do is find out what they believe. Emotional creatures, human beings are run, our software for our behavior is based on our beliefs. So if I believe that exercising every day is a core benefit to living a healthier, happier, more fulfilled life, if I really have that belief and it's a strong one, most likely you'll see that in my behavior, that I'll work out every day or 3 times a week or whatever it is that based on the strength of my belief in that actual the idea that I exercise every day, or that's that important. That's one way to do it. So what do I believe about everything? So let's say you're coaching an entrepreneur and you say, well, what do you sell? And they say, well, I sell bread baskets. And you say, well, how much do you really, but why bread baskets? Tell me more about that. And you find out why. Well, it turns out my grandmother was a bread basket maker in Florida and blah, blah, blah. I grew up around bread baskets, whatever it is. And you have a discussion and you take notes and you find out what they believe about the product. Why is it that this person's selling it? Okay, because I'll give you an example. A lot of times when you're coaching a person in small business or as a salesperson, you ask them, if you ask them enough questions, I'll tell you enough answers and you'll start to paint the picture. And what happens is a lot of times they're selling it because it's profitable. I mean, I'll tell you, I worked in pharmaceutical for many years as a coach to turn low-performing teams that we did turnarounds on, and some mid-performing teams and some high-performing teams, but mostly low-performing turnarounds. And a lot of times what they told me in these interviews and during these surveys that we did with these companies, they'd say, look, I'm selling pharmaceutical because I'm making really good money. So you're doing the job for the money. Yeah, I'm doing the job for the money. Okay, it's not. I mean, it's an honest answer. It's not like it's wrong. It's just that you can imagine, you could pretty much predict that this is not going to be the best salesperson on the team. Okay, if they're just doing it for money. Now, I've had other people say, you know what, this drug saved my father's life when I was a child. And so I made a pact, with my family that once I got out of college, I was going to apply to this company and I was going to sell this life-saving, life-enhancing drug. And I sell it every day. I probably had stories like that, probably from 100 different salespeople over 23 years in the pharmaceutical industry, who would say they had a story something like that, where they believed in the product so much, or they were on the product themselves, some kind of life-saving product. And so one person on the team is doing it because they're making a good living selling it. That's the only connection they have to the product. Another person has a life-altering experience because of this product, or is related to someone who did, and they believe it's a mission, And it's a totally different thing. Like, I've worked in the financial industry for a long time. My 2 major markets as a mental toughness coach and a turnaround specialist were in financial and pharmaceutical. And I had a lot of people in financial say the same thing. I said, well, I got in the financial industry to become a financial advisor for example, because, you can make a lot of money doing that. And that was one level of performer. And then I had other people say, you know what? I never knew anything about money, and it really impacted my life in a negative way. And then someone mentored me about money, and it really changed my life. And now I want to help people change their lives because it changed mine. And I feel like everyone should have the opportunity to know how money works. And I feel like it's the mission of my life to do that. Okay. That's obviously what you want to hear as a coach, because now you know what they believe, and that tells you how they're going to behave. Belief determines behavior. The stronger the belief, the stronger the behavior. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people with those beliefs, and if they're not there, we go find them. And no, we don't go find them. I didn't go find them, but the company, I would recommend that to the company, to the leadership. I'd say you need to find people who want this job because they believe in it. Because if they're out there selling, that belief will transfer to the prospect. But if you got someone that's just out there because they're making it good, they can make more money selling financial services, let's say, than they can selling lumber at Home Depot. That's not really, you're not going to see a strong behavior, and that's typically one of the key indicators that hurts sales teams, because the people aren't there for the right reasons. They don't have the passion. And so they tend not to sell as much, because a passionate salesperson is typically what drives a prospect to say yes. You think, geez, this guy believes in it, or this gal believes in this product so much, they're so wound up about it, it must be pretty good, because how can you get wound up about something that sucks? You can't. It's pretty hard to do. You can go through the motions, and most salespeople do. Let's be honest. I mean, I've coached, I've in terms of teams, about 100,000 salespeople. Okay, so I've been around salespeople for a long time, and most of them are not very good. And it's not because they don't have the talent. It's because they don't have the belief. They're not there for the right reason. And so this is the beginning of the 360 view. Okay, so let's move on from that. That's where you start. If you want to, because coaches always say, I don't know where you start mental toughness. Where do you start? That's where you start. You start with their belief system. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. You know what you do as a mental toughness coach? You ask questions. You bathe in questions. And then you take copious notes on the answers. And then the answers paint the picture on how to proceed to turn around the team, or to increase or enhance the performer or the team's level of results. That's where you have to build the blueprint before you get the result. And the blueprint comes from asking the right questions. So it starts with beliefs. That's where we always start. You can start in other places, but I like starting with belief because it tells me so much more almost than anything else I'm going to ask. Okay, so now what else? 360. You want to see the performer or the team all the way around. I don't want to know one aspect. I want to know every aspect of this team's makeup or this person's makeup, because that's what's driving the result. Okay, so now let's go to another thing. What else? Let's say it's a sales team, just to keep it consistent. Okay, so it's a sales team. Now I want to know what their sales training's like. Tell me about your sales training. I'm going to interview the people. That's what I did. I interviewed the people. Tell me about your sales training. Now, obviously, you know the answer to this. This is linear. The better sales training they have, the better salespeople they tend to be in terms of asking questions, in terms of pushing not pushing, but let's say prodding the prospect a little bit to come out to tell us more information, to tell them more information, all kinds of things. They're bolder, they're more confident typically because they have better training. They tend to enjoy the job more if they have better training because they don't feel like they're ill prepared. There's all kinds of things. I want to know their product knowledge. That's another part of the 360 view. Okay, what's their product knowledge? A lot of times, a matter of fact, most of the times when we go into mid-level companies that did it under $1 billion in revenue, there was almost no sales training. I mean, you wouldn't even believe it. I mean, it's a hard. That's why we always went for the biggest companies, because we knew fundamentally they were solid. Good product training, good product knowledge, high-level candidates and salespeople from good schools that they hired, usually out of college, or they promoted from within. They had kind of the cream of the cream, and so I always figured, well, if you're doing turnarounds with low-performing teams, the odds were better that you would succeed if you were working with a team that had good fundamentals. I know it's kind of stacking the deck a little bit, but what's wrong with that, And so there'd be fewer variables in the equation to repair or to improve. right? Because that's what you do as a consultant or a coach with a company. You gotta find out everything that's going on and find where they're breaking down. It's no different than taking apart a car engine. You take it apart. You take enough parts out of off a car engine, and you'll find the bad one. You'll find the one that's broken. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's pretty linear. It's just a different way to do it. So whether you're doing this yourself or with a team or with a person or whatever, you want to see everything. I want to see the whole 360 view. What's their product knowledge? What's their people knowledge? Are they good with people? Okay. What are their sales skills? What's their belief system? What's their worldview? What do they think about the company? Do they like the company they're working for? A lot of people don't. You know how I know? Because I've surveyed, God knows how many people. I mean, I don't know, 1 million. I don't know how many it is. We never counted them, but a lot of corporate salespeople over 23 years, because that's how we found we do anonymous surveys. It's one of the reasons we get, one of the ways we get all this information. And so they don't like working where they don't like the company. They don't even like the company. I've asked so many of them, how much stock if it's a public company, how much stock do you own in the company? And they'll say, I don't own any. Why not? Well, I don't believe in the principles of the company, the fundamentals of the company. I don't think it's that good of a company. Tell me why. Oh, here's why. And you go, why do you work here? It's like, why? It's just the craziest thing. And so then we do a survey and we find out that 72% of the company people don't even like the company. It's crazy. And we go back to management and they go, are you? Where did you get this? We asked your people. 72% of them don't want to work here. That's what they told us. There's your problem. There's one of the main problems right there. So the more facets of a team that you explore, okay, as a coach, consultant, or person, if it's an individual, the more facets of that person's belief system and their performance and their training and their education, all those things, the more the picture will become clear. Everyone's got a camera now on their phone, and I love it. I mean, technology is so cool. I mean, I just love it. I'm not great at it, but I love it. I really do. It's a lot of fun. But, back in the day, we developed our own film. You took it to a photo mat when they used to have photo mats and drugstores and stuff like that. And they have the film develop. It was expensive too. I had my own darkroom when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And my brother was into photography. And so I built my own, not built it, but I had a darkroom in one of the bathrooms in our house in Chicago. And the point I'm trying to make is if you've ever been in a darkroom, if you're old enough to have been in a darkroom before, they called them dark rooms when you develop film. It's because it's all dark. It's just got like a blue light. And because the film is not, impacted by that light. And you'd put it in a development solution and you'd watch the picture develop. It would just go from a blank white sheet of paper, like a Kodak piece of film paper, and it would just develop. You just watch it come to life. And it was really cool. And that's what happens when you do this 360 dissection with a person or a team or whomever you're coaching or whatever you're coaching. It's just the more questions you ask and the more of a 360 view you get, the clearer the picture becomes. Now, once the picture is clear, you can it's like reading a blueprint. You can see exactly why they're underperforming or exactly why they're performing at a middle grade level or exactly why they're a top performing team. It's a blueprint. And the craziest thing is, once you learn how to do this, and you do it for, an individual is one thing. When you do it for a team, like a big team in a company, people think you're pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I've sat across in boardrooms, some of the biggest companies in the world, and presented this information after 3 to 6 months. And the people in the boardroom are like, how the hell I don't understand how you figured this out. I mean, you're some kind of genius or something. And I say, I wish I were. That'd be really great, But my past academic and other experiences don't really support that genius idea. But thank you for the sentiment. But here's how we actually did it. We did our homework. That's what we did. We did a boatload of homework. And when you do a boatload of homework and you're doing homework on the right things, that film paper will develop like magic. It looks like magic. It's not. It's just a lot of work. But you have to know what work to do. And that's the 360 piece. That's one of the keys to being a high-level 7-figure consultant. It's a hell of a lot of homework. I mean, that's really, it's like saying, the lawyers say, what's one of the keys to being a great trial lawyer? Research. A lot of research. If you don't want to do research, don't become a lawyer, unless you can hire a bunch of people to deliver it to you, which, usually doesn't come in the beginning. So that's one of the key things, is that get that 360 view. So let's just say you're coaching your kid to be a better baseball player, basketball player, tennis player, football player, whatever. Find out as much as you can about every aspect of, even if it's your own kid, if it's your son or daughter. Find out every aspect of their performance, how much they train, what they're training on, their belief systems, of course, their coaches, everything that impacts them. And you do a lot of it by asking questions to the coaches, maybe to the coaches, obviously to the person. And you develop all this information as widely as you possibly can so you can see the person all the way through, the whole thing, 360 view. Then you'll start. Then the film will start to develop, and you'll look at it and go, "Well, of course they're underperforming. Look at this. This whole side of their performance is just completely, underdeveloped. I mean, of course they're not going to be at that level. I remember having a team. One of the teams they gave me was, I asked for all these metrics on their team. When I was trying to sell a large consulting deal with a big company. I won't name the company because I don't have permission, but they gave me a whole bunch of metrics on 3 different teams, and they ranked the teams in pharmaceutical from 1 to 24 in the country. That's just the way they do it in these big companies in the United States. And so obviously 24 is the worst performing team in a pharmaceutical company, and number 1 is the best performing team. So when I was trying to sell a contract, I was trying to sell the national, not the board, but a team of executives that was in charge of hiring a consultant, turnaround people, basically, turnaround consultants. And so I said, I tried to get the job. It was millions of dollars. It was a big deal for me at the time. And so they said, okay, I'll tell you what, because I said, what we do is we come in, and I basically told them what I told you guys. We take a 360 view. We dissect the team. We dissect the individual performers. We dissect the management team. We dissect the senior management team. We get so much data and so much information that we know what's happening before they know what's happening. I'm going to know more about this team than the person that runs it. And they look at you, they looked at me at that point like, okay, you're exaggerating your own competence. And they said, okay, well, let's do this. Let's do a little test. Give us a few weeks. You come back up here and fly back up here, and we're going to give you 3 sets of metrics from these big companies on sales teams. They keep huge amounts of metrics. Not everyone they should, but they keep the basic metrics, and it's a lot of data. We're going to give you 3 sets, and we'll give you a couple hours to analyze all 3 sets of data. Then you tell us on the ranking scale of 1 to 24 where each team roughly is ranked. And so anyway, I said, absolutely, I'll be able to do it. I'll be within a couple numbers, probably easily, but it won't be by much. I won't miss by much because it's pretty predictable if you have enough data, and they usually do. So anyway, long story short, I went back 2 weeks later, roughly, and they gave me 3 sets, gave me a couple hours to dissect it, and I said, well, let me start out. I'll just tell you this part of the story because it's a couple hours long. But I said, let me tell you right away that I've seen the metrics on the first one I analyzed, and I will tell you without any doubt in my mind, this is your number 1 team. Guaranteed. I tell you what, if this isn't your number 1 team, you're the greatest company I've ever worked with in 20 years, or whatever it was at the time I was working for the industry. And I said, this is your number 1 team. No question about it. And there was 5 of them on the committee, and they looked at me like, okay, so how do you know that? These weren't sales numbers. These weren't market share numbers. Of course they didn't give me those. That would have told me that would have given it to me. No, they were giving me prospecting numbers. They were giving me appointment numbers. They were giving me all kinds of sales numbers, training numbers, product knowledge numbers, all kinds of basic metrics that these companies record on a weekly basis through technology. They do it in computers. The salespeople enter the numbers, and for the most part, and the managers do the rest. And so I said, this is the number 1 team. There's no question about it. And I'll tell you the rest. And I was going to do the other teams. And then one of the guys said that there's almost just no way you could know that just by that little data. I said, I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I tell you what, if that's not your number 1 team, just kick me out right now because I don't know what I'm doing. Because any consultant with their in the psychological space in sales would know that that's the number 1 team. And they couldn't believe it. They thought I was a magician. They said, that's our number 1 team by far. Matter of fact, that's the greatest team we've probably ever had in this company, at least in the last 25 years. And I said, I'm sure I don't doubt that at all. As a matter of fact, my job would be to take these other 2, which by the way are roughly in the middle. They're roughly 10, 12, 13 in the country, that somewhere around the middle. They're very middle class. They're very middle of the road metrics. And they said, that's absolutely right, And I said, yeah, that's not, you guys, I said, this is not hard to figure out. Just so you know, I'm not any kind of magician. I'm no genius. This is not that difficult. All right. If you know what you're doing, it's not that difficult. My job, but basically if you hire me, is to turn those two mid-level performing teams into this team, or as close as we can get. And one of the guys said, you're hired. And it was a multi-million-dollar deal. But the bottom line is it wasn't complicated. It was a 360 view. I wasn't getting completely 360 because I didn't have time to do my own proprietary research, which I always do, but I was trying to sell the deal. But it impressed them enough to know that I was close enough because just with the limited information they gave me. This works every single time. I mean, I've never seen it not work. That's why we had so much success doing turnarounds, because it's really hard to miss when you have a 360 view. So anyway, I go on forever about this, but it's something to really dig into. Here's my last piece of advice. Do your homework. Do your homework as a coach. Do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. Most coaches suck, not because they're not good coaches. It's because they don't do enough homework based on who they're coaching, because you don't coach every person or every team the exact same way. And that's a whole nother subject for another time. But the bottom line is you can become a great coach or a great consultant if you're willing to do the homework and the research. It's not so much about being smart. It's about being educated on who you're coaching or the team you're coaching. That's the secret to the whole thing. That's $1 million secret right there. That's how we made millions and millions of dollars over the years. One of the key ways. So take a 360 view. All right, guys, I'm over time anyway. Make sure you subscribe, mentaltoughnnesspodcast.org, and we'll put you on the list and send you an email with the new episode every week. And with that, I'm Steve Siebold. Thanks for listening.